To fantastically talented people, really just outstanding. And so just in those first few moments, I just thought, gosh, this is something a bit out of the ordinary. And as I got to know Tom and Nimue, I realized they are just wonderfully, amazingly talented, lovely, lovely people. So we're very lucky to have you, Tom and Nimue. Welcome from your home in Stroud, yes, in lovely Gloucestershire, I think, isn't it? Yes. So thank you very much. You are artists, you are illustrators, you've done book covers. So this is basically our theme for the day. So Tom, I do know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it because I know this will amuse you. You are from Maine in America. What made you come to Britain?
Nimue.
So what happened?
Well, I fell in love with her, and this is the place for her. So I came here.
We were put together by a publishing house, what, 15 years ago, for Tom to do me a book cover. And we just started talking, and we kept talking, and we're still talking, and here we are.
Yes.
So the abridged version.
Yes. And I'm a very lucky bloke.
Wonderful. Right, Tom, so let's think about the art. You have an absolutely unique style that I think nobody has ever seen anywhere else. Your work is immediately identifiable. Can you give us just a little bit of insight into why you're an artist, what art means to you?
Okay, it's actually pretty easy. I grew up in libraries and reading constantly. I was raised by authors in the same way that Tarzan was raised by apes, but with less dramatic results. This gives me no ability to go from tree to tree in an unusual way or anything like that. But it did give me an absolute, deep, intense love of books and writing. And I wanted to be part of that. But as Nimue will tell you, I have good ideas, but I cannot plot my way out of a paper bag. So my way of becoming involved had to be through the art. So I see myself very much as being in service to story.
And how do you...
the question at all? I don't know.
Yes, it does. How do you...
That was an accident.
Obviously, you're a visual creator. How do you relate your visual images to words on the printed page? Is there any? Are you looking at your images in your mind? Are you looking at templates you've seen before? What's the link?
Okay, this is a kind of a funny one. There's a word for it when you can see things in your head using your imagination, when a picture forms in your mind. And I've forgotten what that is. Mark Lawrence doesn't have it. Anyway, I don't have it. You'd think that I do, but I don't. Everything, in order for me to be able to see what should be in my head, I have to use my hand. And this is one of the satisfactions of my job, is that I'll sit down and I'll start to draw, and then it will come clear to me, but not until I start actually drawing it.
Right. So you're literally making something real, aren't you? That has come in through some alternate way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us about the color palette that you use? That's again really distinct. It's so distinctive. And I have asked you this before, but it'd be really interesting to hear where that palette came from.
I think I'll pass that one over to Nimue.
Oh, okay.
Tom is fundamentally afraid of color. He likes black and white and graphite. And some years ago, we were embroiled in a version of Le Morte d'Arthur, and they said, we want strong medieval colours. And there were whimpering noises because colour, which is the point at which I went, I'm not afraid of colour, maybe I can do this, I can sort of art a bit. So I came in as a colourist at this point. Hopeless is inherently muted because that's the nature of the island, which is convenient really, because it means not frightening Tom with colour too often. But it started with Personal Demons with the first book. You wanted to do black and white, if memory serves, and there was sort of a grudging acceptance that to get a publisher there might have to be some colour involved. So a minimal amount of colour in the first pages. One reviewer suggested that it was sort of the emotional journey of the book as the colour comes in.
And that's absolutely what it was.
So yes, that's
it was just me slowly coming to terms with the fact that I had to use colour.
Right. Now, you do work together, don't you, as a pair of artists, effectively. And Nimue, you do the colour for Tom's.
Yeah, we've got a page.
Yes, show us what you've got. Yes.
Oh, hang on, I got a better one.
Well, it's got a naked panel on it.
Okay, use that one.
Let's start with this one. So, this bottom panel, this one, is still at the pencil line stages because I haven't got to it today. Sorry. I'm partially through colouring that one. But yeah, so Tom puts down the lines, figures out where everything goes, perspective, all the stuff that I couldn't do if my life depended on it. And I come in with pencils and a lack of fear of colour, and and it looks a bit like that.
And then I come back in very gently and just reestablish some of the some of the line work.
Yeah.
And off we go. And then get it into Photoshop. And there are something, like tiny highlights, things that would be really, really time consuming and
not technically possible in some cases.
To do with colored pencils.
Little bits of white are prohibitively difficult when the paper has got quite a lot of grey on it from the graphite. So
right. Can you give us some idea of the timescales we're talking about here for what you've just shown us? Is that a couple of days' work, or is it maybe a couple of days' work and you do other things in between that?
That one was 2 days' work for me drawing it. And that's a 2-page, it's a wraparound cover.
I probably put in about 8 hours, I reckon.
Okay. And then it'll be probably another 3 in Photoshop for me.
And you did an hour on it.
Oh yeah.
Yesterday?
Yeah, probably about an hour.
So it passes back and forth between us quite a bit as we're going along.
Yeah,
right. Which
is better than the answer that we would have given you, or I would have given you before this process started, which would have just been me crying. So
this is a lot faster than it used to be, which is as well, really.
Right. So we'll go to steampunk and Hopeless Maine in a moment. But Nimue, you are a druid. You have. Can you just tell us a little bit about your druidic and pagan connections?
Oh, well, I grew up in a family that was kind of loosely pagan, so I had a lot of the folklore and the rootedness in wild things and all the rest of it from fairly early on. Alan Garner and that sort of thing, shaping my sense of direction. I came to paganism in a formal way when I was about 18. Druidry in my early 20s. I studied with the Order of Bards, Obates and Druids. I've mentored for them a bit as well. I used to run ritual groups in the West Midlands during the decade I was in the Midlands. These days I mostly blog and write about things and have a sort of an eccentric solitary druiding. I don't know, what is a single druid? It's not quite the thing at that point. It's a sort of a creature in a hedge. But there we go. Yeah, it colours a lot of what I do, and there's a lot of animism that creeps into the work because it's just part of how we see the world. I think the idea that anything could potentially have intentions or preferences or opinions is something I find very attractive, and that's kind of there in everything I do.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Would it be fair to say that you two are best known for Hopeless Maine and steampunk in general? I mean, I came to know you as steampunk people.
Yeah.
Would that be so? What's the attraction there?
It's fun.
Yeah, basically.
It's such a nice community to be part of, and we fell in by accident. There were people who saw early Hopeless stuff and went, "Hang on, you belong to us," basically. Yeah. And we went, "Oh." Had a look at them, found Professor Elemental, went to events, thought these are people for whom we want to make books. This is a fantastic community. It's exciting. There's ideas we can steal. The aesthetics are cool. It's just
and it's in terms of a broad, inclusive community. Just they're amazing. Yeah.
And we've met so many fantastic people doing steampunk stuff that we just want to make things for them. Really.
Yeah. This is particularly noteworthy about steampunk, isn't it? It's a very, very inclusive, diverse, broad-based community. I can't think of anything quite like it. What do you think is the reason for that? Because nominally, steampunk is really very specific. You know, British Empire, English-British perspective.
It's mostly though people.
Quite a strange.
Where is it? There we are. That's I'm wearing my Dr. Jeff patch. If anyone thought that was what steampunk was, they'd just have to go look at Dr. Jeff.
Yeah. And there are people who come in who are sort of expecting that sort of thing, but frankly, they don't tend to last long.
Yeah.
And there are people who come in trying to figure out what the rules are and what's proper and what isn't. And frankly, they don't tend to last long either.
No.
It attracts people who want to muck about with stuff while wearing a nice hat. Is I think the essence of it. There's a playfulness and creativity and a fondness for ridiculous clothing, and these things mesh together rather nicely. I think.
Yeah, that really struck me when I met you and at Lincoln was just this lovely sense of enjoyment that people were having, and actually Lincoln welcomes Asylum, doesn't it? Lincoln, I think, is quite proud.
Well, it should, yes.
Yeah, that these amazing people.
Yes.
Yeah. How did you two get involved with Asylum?
Where did we start with Asylum? Was that, I think Paul recommended we get
Paul
in touch.
recommended and Leanne Farragut. So two friends of ours, as we were just coming into it, I had been just becoming part of the steampunk scene in the US. And then I moved to the UK, and people said, "Okay, if you're UK steampunk, you have to be part of Asylum." So
we went.
Yeah. So we sent an email and a few negotiations, and we were included as guests, and it was amazing.
The rest is history. Yeah.
And we hefted chairs because there was a lot of repurposing of venues, and we turned up the first morning, and that big hall we were in when you were there actually was just full of chairs. So we just mucked in. We didn't know even who we were working with, but it turned out that we were working with John Naylor, who organises the whole thing.
Yeah.
And by dint of being the kind of people who heft chairs, we became good friends with him. He's a fine chap, but that's very much the ethos of the thing. People who get their hands dirty.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, just have fun. Yeah. Right. Let's talk book covers. Now you, I do have what's the word I'm after? Preferred it. Oh God, I can't think of the word now. I have worked with you before. I have to declare that. So we're going to talk about the covers that we did first. But Stephen Saville, you have worked with. Can you just tell us, did Stephen approach you, or did you like his work, or what have you done for Stephen Saville?
Okay, Stephen Saville, there is a book that I think is written. I'm starting in the middle here. That's a bad idea. Okay, he approached me. He saw the illustrations. It reminded him of some other illustrators that he liked. I looked him up. I started reading some of his stuff. He's great. And so he had this very personal project that he wanted to do. And it's called The Kingdom of Rain. And the idea is on the night that you die, that one dies, everyone has the same dream, basically. And it's just like all of my, it's still doing it. All of my arm hair went up.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be part of it. And then he started sending me the descriptions of the illustrations that he wanted. Is he going to kill me for saying this?
No,
okay.
I think
because it's true.
It's true. And you got
so I said, Stephen, this sounds amazing. Can I read the book? He said, I haven't written it, actually. And he sent, I think they were in like 5s. So he'd send the description of 5 illustrations and I'd do them. And then I'd get the next set of descriptions for illustrations. And it's like, okay, that's, the first ones were tricky and challenging and interesting. And the next ones were like, he just turned it up 3 or 4 more notches in each description. So that by the time we got to the last illustrations, I read them and I'd say, okay, there's nowhere in the world that I can actually draw this on a piece of paper. Oh, what the hell, let's give it a try. And I did. We got through the whole set.
He was trying to drive you mad.
And then he admitted later that he was actually trying to push me to the very edges of what I could do. So, but that's not the end of the story. Since the contract is signed and we've gone public, I can now say it was supposed to be in part of a collection, one of those humble bundle things that was supposed to come out around Christmas time that year. But the publisher went under or something happened. And now we do one of those scenes where you have the calendar and the wind blows and then the days go by. What was it, like 3 years after? Yeah, about 3 years. And I just, I'd send him a message occasionally and say, how's it going? And he'd say, well, I'm still looking. Heavy Metal has picked us up and is serializing The Kingdom of Rain and doing 1 illustration and a segment of story.
Wow.
19 issues. And this also means that I get to be on the cover of Heavy Metal magazine, the cover image that I did for Stephen. So
wow, so that'll
Dragon is going to
so
be
that will give you really good coverage of your work and
yes.
who you are.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. Now listen, you and I have worked together. You did 3 of the most gorgeous illustrations for my Factory Girl trilogy, and the also the illustration for the Conchita. Now, obviously, I know how we did that, but could you just tell everybody how we worked on those 3 covers? Because it was quite a specific brief, wasn't it? The books were already written.
Yes.
Nimue, in fact, had reviewed them with their original covers, and then I asked you to do new covers. And how did we work on that?
Okay, from my point of view, what happened, because I had not read the books yet, Nimue read the books and had reviewed them and knew that you had asked me to do the covers, and then Nimue informed me that I was doing the covers for your books, which turned out to be a very good thing. But it was because they're amazing and like nothing else in the world. And I read them and I realized that they were amazing and like nothing else in the world. And so it wasn't difficult to be inspired to come up with something that was pretty unusual for the covers for the book, because they bloody deserve it. The trick was, because a lot of the imagery is very, very out there and doesn't fit into tropes very easily. And for a cover, you want something that will suggest a trope or, oh, this is a bit like. So we had to find the things that said, okay, this has got some unusual stuff, but it's steampunk. You're in safe territory. It's going to be okay. It's not, but we wanted them to think so.
It is a thing.
So I think, does that answer that question?
Yeah. In fact, let's actually move on from that, because you've raised some really, which is really the sort of the crux of what you want to talk about here, isn't it? That you are evoking the tropes of a novel in your front cover, aren't you?
Yeah.
You focused on the characters. Are you trying to generate in the viewer? Are you trying to generate a specific emotion or feeling? What would you say?
Okay, this is tricky. a lot of this happens unconsciously because, you know, this is something that I think about to an obsessive degree a lot of the time, and have since, you know, since I was a teenager, probably. But to break it down, it would depend largely on the book. You need something that has impact. Exactly what impact that is going to be depends partly on the book. You obviously want to get some emotional reaction out of the viewer, but you want an emotional reaction. You want something that can be sort of understood in as few seconds as possible, or portions of seconds as possible, because that's how long you get as people are scanning across covers in a bookstore or on online booksellers that we won't mention.
Yeah.
And they do have to make sense small, which didn't used to be an issue. But
yeah.
if your thumbnail of your cover isn't reasonably coherent to sort of to look at, then it turns people off, and that's quite a significant marketing issue. I mean, there's such a key thing for marketing a book, and that balance between familiar enough that people feel they know what they're looking at and this is the book for them, and unfamiliar enough to be eye-catching is just, it's always going to be a tightrope walk, isn't it?
Yeah, comfortable and not another bloody one of those somewhere in there.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point about having just a few seconds to get the it's really a wow factor, isn't it? Wow factor, something that just stands out in a really short amount of, because readers are looking at lots of different novels in one go, and if yours doesn't stand out, they'll pass over it. You know, whether or not it evokes the right genre or whatever, if it hasn't got that fraction of a second wow factor. I think again, Tom, that's what happened with the ones you did for me. Thinking about The Girl with Two Souls, the way you've got corking out of the book cover at the prospective viewer, with Dr. Spellman behind her, and then this wonderful sort of Odin's train behind that. Was just,
that was a change.
In a second, you've got a wonderful image there, which you caught absolutely fantastically.
And it had the tropes, the steampunk tropes, the dress and the train, you know, actual steam. I didn't find a way to fit in an actual punk, but you know,
no,
you'll write another book. We'll do it.
I will. I'll especially for you. What did you do with Professor Elemental then? Because again, that's a pretty distinctive cover.
Yeah.
Oh, are we talking Letters Between Gentlemen?
I think so.
Yes, that one. Yes, yes.
That was a while ago. What were we thinking? I don't know.
Okay, let's see. Okay. My first steampunk event was Steampunk World's Fair in New Jersey in the US, back before that event was put on by the creep that we won't mention. Anyway, that was the good year. That event had one good year and I was at it, maybe 2 good years. And we were communicating online. We were still an ocean apart at that point. But we had both seen the video for
Cup of
Brown Joy, and we were instant fans of Professor Elemental. We knew that Professor Elemental was going to be at the Steampunk World's Fair, so Nimue made me promise that I would talk to him. And so I was very nervous and waited until the very, 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 I kept, wanting to go up to him. He was surrounded by lots of people and so on and so forth. And I was new to all of this. And so at the very end of the event, most of the people had gone. There in the big foyer with the huge windows and the sun streaming in, there's a man standing by himself in a pith helmet and a lovely yellow sundress. And I know this is my moment. So I went up to him very nervously with a little bookmark that had Anna Murray from Hopeless Maine on it. And I sort of, and he's all, "Oh, I love comics. Let's talk. Give me your email." And so I got his email and we started talking. And then Nimue started talking, and I sent him, it was Semblance of Truth, the as yet unpublished Hopeless Maine novella, which he loved. I don't know if we should get into that part. No, that's a long story. But he fell in love with the writing and wanted to work with her. She wanted to work with him. They did a book together. He didn't know how to plot at this point. He's a much stronger writer now. He's a strong writer now, actually. So the way that Nimue got him through it was to actually write letters as all of the characters to him, and then he would respond as Professor Elemental, and then you promised that you would find a plot in all of this, and you did it.
Fine, it was glorious actually, because he's got such a strange and random mind, and he'd come up with what even just happened things, and I'm going, how do I stitch this in? How do I make this make sense? But honestly, that's kind of my happy place. If people have got kind of half a dozen things that make no obvious sense, like, yes, I will knit this together into some kind of plausible story.